All right, hey everyone, Cody here. Going to get to a few questions that I had submitted over the last few weeks to me in different forms. One of them was through the Facebook group Becoming a DSS Agent, and so I'll start this a little different. Actually, I'll talk about some of the resources that I have out there to help you in your endeavors to either become a DS agent or some other federal law enforcement agent. I think a lot of it overlaps. A lot of stuff I'm doing kind of overlaps. But specifically for a DS agent, we have the Becoming a DSS Agent Facebook group. Go check that out. Fill out the questions. It's where DS agents, active DS agents of all different levels, interact with candidates or aspiring DS agents, or even kids just in college or right out of high school that are looking to potentially join DS in the future. They're all interacting. They're asking questions, and it's a good group. Like I said, fill out the questions so I know who you are, and a little bit about your background, and we'll get you in the group. Obviously my YouTube, you're here. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not, if you find this somewhere else, Cody Perron, just search CodyPerron, and you can get some information there. My website, CodyPerron.com. You can buy stuff there. You can see some, catch a couple of things. Off the X podcast. That is wherever you get your podcasts. It's really, I think, pretty useful for people wanting to become a DS agent, where I interview former DS agents, active DS agents, the DS recruitment office, former security contractors, former United States Marine security guards. So go and check that out. I think that's a useful tool for you. And also Patreon. I started a Patreon account. That is where you can subscribe. That's the only one that costs a little bit of money, but it's $5. You can get extra kind of stories or articles on everything from global security to how to be a good agent overseas, how to navigate the world in diplomatic facilities overseas. I also do a story time where I get on similar to a podcast, and I tell stories that didn't necessarily make my book, not because they weren't good enough, just because they didn't have enough meat to tell a complete chapter. So I do 20 to 30 minute stories on there, and you can take it all the way up to the $75 level, where you and I could train for your federal law enforcement interview. And so we do scenario based, we do experience and motivation, and we role play. We talk back and forth. I ask questions. We do writing samples, but it's all prep stuff, right? So you're welcome, and there's stuff in between, right? We have networking. We did a virtual happy hour recently. I'm going to have some guest speakers down the road. So there's a number of things you can do, but check it out. Patreon.com/offthex_inc, INC. And you can go, and you can cancel anytime if you don't like it, move on. But it is a way to help me pay for for the domain, for the different costs that I have to produce the podcast and editing and stuff like that. So it helps out. All right, let's get to some of the questions. Is the State Department, so I'll just go over the questions first in case you want to bow out at some point. Is the State Department DSS agent of 50/50 investigations and protection? This is from our Facebook group. Are there any restrictions during my off time when I'm living overseas? Can I travel the region or within the country? And then how do DS agents interact with U.S. citizens overseas? So is State Department a 50/50 investigations and protection? No, it's not. Not even close. The State Department, we kind of break up DSAs into three different components. That's our three main responsibilities: investigations into visa passport fraud and those crimes with a nexus, protection of dignitaries and U.S. Secretary of State, so visiting foreign dignitaries to the U.S. and Secretaries of State, and a few others. And also security management overseas. So you work at a diplomatic facility overseas, and you manage those security programs. You're the lead law enforcement agent. There's a number of things you do, from physical security to liaison to counterintelligence portfolio, working with different entities. I liked it. It was one of my favorite things. It's more of a kind of it just depends where you're at. The job is different than full force investigations or protection, but we break it up into those. Now, is it a third of each? No, you can kind of choose your career of where you want to go with it. But if you're going to be in a field office as a young agent and you're supposed to be doing investigations, these days you're getting pulled left and right to do protection details. So right now, we have some protectees that have been held over, or a protectee has been held over from the last administration, and therefore DS. When I say we, I'm not part of the organization anymore, by the way. But DS has kind of some responsibilities that have been expanded, roles that have been expanded. And so, even if you're in a field office where you're supposed to be doing investigations, you are going to get pulled to do protection every time. How often? I don't know. Depends on what field office you're in. Depends on what your kind of goals are. You can go as much as you want sometimes. It kind of depends on your caseload, but 50-50 investigations and protection. No. I will say that there is an investigations office within headquarters that does kind of bigger investigations that really link into investigations that will have more meat and have more prosecutorial merit. And you can get with that office, and then at that office, you're let's just throw a number out there: 90% investigations. It's only a 2 to 3 year tour, but you still get pulled every once in a while for like United Nations General Assembly in, I believe it's October. And then, DS Investigations portfolio, I think I've talked about this, like it's just not so robust, man. There's Visa passport fraud, but, I don't think a lot of people know that just because a crime is committed doesn't mean it has to be prosecuted. There's a lot of crimes are committed, particularly in this realm, these fraud crimes where the U.S. attorney says, not enough merit there to prosecute, don't want to waste our resources, and they'll just decline. You'll get a declination. Sometimes you'll go in with a declination. You're like, look, sir or ma'am, I don't think this has enough. They would get maybe 6 months out of this, and then you bow out. So because of the cases we investigate don't have so much merit to them, or a long sentencing longer sentencing guidelines, our investigations is not so robust. So the person was asking this in regard to like, hey, I want to be an 1811. I want to be a special agent. And being a DS special agent is different than any other. You go DEA, you go FBI, you go ATF, whatever it is, you're going to be focused almost solely, primarily on investigations. DS is not like that. So if you're looking to be a special agent doing like law enforcement work, investigations, kicking in doors, making arrests, you're not going to do a lot of that in DS. You will do some, but you're going to have other focuses. So hope that explains it. Are there any restrictions during my off time? Can I travel within a region or another country? Yeah. You can travel almost wherever you want, as long as you have the time to do it, the money to do it, and there's no restrictions on that area. So, right, when I was in Vietnam, I traveled to everywhere. I traveled to Laos, I traveled to Cambodia, I traveled to Thailand, all over the region. I traveled all over Vietnam. But there are some areas that you go, like, for example, I went to the Philippines. Say you go to the Philippines, you can't go to the South Philippines, right? Because there's a terrorist threat down there. So that would be, for example, off limits. There's places, I believe, in China where you might not be able to go on your off time. Obviously, if you're in one of these high threat terrorist countries, you won't be able to go to some spaces. So, but generally, if you have the time, you have the money, and it's not off limits, yes, you can travel the region. You can work with the staff at the embassy to book your tickets right through one of the local airlines, which costs a lot less. And sometimes you can't do that through just regular online, like going through Google and searching an airline. You won't be able to do it, but you can go through the embassy or consulate, and they will hook you up, and you don't generally pay a lower price. So yes, your off time, you really don't have any restrictions for whether it's travel or things you do, as long as you're not doing anything illegal or malicious. You're good to go. How much do DS agents interact with U.S. citizens overseas? So I broke this up. I don't know what the question. I'm assuming they mean at work, and I'll say at work, not much. Your responsibility as a DS agent is to provide a safe and secure environment for American government personnel, diplomatic personnel, for property, U.S. government property, and secure classified information or information in general, sensitive information. So that doesn't have much overlap with the public. Now, there are times where we will interact with the public through, for example, OSAC, which is the Overseas Security Advisory Council. If you're in a location or a post where there are U.S. companies, then you will, potentially have a meeting with them and they say, hey, what's the risks here? Maybe there's a traveling guy they want to invest, or they want to open up an office there, and they'll reach out to you and say, hey, can we come and set up a meeting with you to talk about, threats and vulnerabilities and risks? What are some trends going on in the country? In that case, yeah, you'll have a little bit of interaction. There are some other kind of one-offs where you might be asked. I was asked by the ambassador once to go and check in on an American citizen that was allegedly being held hostage by a Vietnamese, and that is not what we're supposed to do. It's not something we do in general. This might be a good story for my Patreon, but I was asked by the ambassador to go, so we went, and it wasn't any kicking indoors. I was literally monitoring the situation while I waited on the Vietnamese to come and do their thing. And so, once we got that person out, I did communicate with them. We actually took them back to the embassy. And so you get involved, and when you're overseas, that's why I like it so much. You're involved in so much crazy shit that happens. It's enjoyable, and you got to think on your feet, and you got to know the right people and build those relationships. But in general, another one, like we had a girl that came into American Citizen Services that was raped. We don't generally, American Citizen Services, our consular section deals with that. But then we begin to see a trend that that another person was raped in the same bar. And then we learned about drugs in that bar. And so then we worked with the local PD to investigate and look into it and kind of secure it a little better because we have Americans going there. So while we didn't handle her case specifically, we did some stuff on the back end that allowed us to work to, well, we didn't work with them directly, but we did something to help that community out, that community of visiting foreigners, visiting Americans or expats, which are people that live overseas. So you get involved a little bit. I keep looking at my computers on this side, my other one. So, but in public, for example, you can deal with Americans as much as you want. There's some place that has a heavy American population, and you'll go to the bars and they'll be there. You'll go to events and they'll be there. You might see them at the mall. They don't have malls in every country, but depending on where you're at, you might see them. And you can become friends with them. There's no like regulations. You're a U.S. government employee. You can't become friends with someone. There's plenty of expats, plenty of visitors. And in those cases, yeah, you can befriend someone, and I've seen that, and I've had friends that were living there, working at different locations, and we became friends. So yeah, so you can do a little bit of that. All right, I hope that gives you some solid information. A little shorter than I usually do. That's probably a good thing for you all, not having to listen to me ramble. But again, check out my Patreon. It does help. $5 gets you a good bit of stuff. I communicate well. We can have a one-on-one about your goals and your career endeavors. Or if you just want to support, I'm very grateful for it. I said I have bills that come up with doing this extra side stuff, and I'm grateful for your support. Last thing is, I have hats. This is a prototype, so it's a little higher than I'd like. But contractor hats, contractor style. We got the flat bills. We got some camouflage hats. Of course, I have the T-shirts off the extent, high threat protection. I have one of the most popular. I have hoodies of this as well. It's kind of hot out right now, so maybe hoodies aren't the best for you. But I tend to sell out of those pretty quick. So if you're interested, go to the website and you can do it. If you're a member of the Patreon, you get a discount. You get 15% discount. But anyway, let me know if you got any questions. Put them on the YouTube. If I don't get back to you, shoot me info@codyperron.com. Or my Instagram. I'm very active on the Instagram. The YouTube, sometimes it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but I think I'm pretty reachable. And I will say that if you ask me a question about, hey, how do I become a DSS agent, I'm probably just going to kick you to everything I've already put out. Now, if you have some specific questions because you're in a unique situation, or you want some guidance and mentorship as you studied it all, everything that I've put out. Of course, I wrote a book. This is how this all started. Read this book. Apparently, it's helpful in navigating the interview for being a DS agent. But if you have questions, I'll help you out. But if you haven't done the research, I will say, hey, just go check all this stuff out because I answer a lot of the questions there. And then if you have unique scenarios or you want some mentorship or some guidance, some training, then certainly we can connect and do that. All right, same questions if you got them. Thanks, y'all. Out.